Imagine meeting someone who's 102 years old, not lying in a hospital bed, not spending every day taking medication, not struggling to remember their own name, but gardening, cooking, walking around town, laughing with friends, maybe even taking care of their great-grandchildren. Sounds unusual, right? Now imagine finding entire communities filled with people like that. Places where reaching 90 isn't considered extraordinary. Places where people regularly celebrate their 100th birthdays. Places where chronic diseases show up much later than they do in the rest of the world. For most of us, that sounds almost impossible. We've been told that aging means getting weaker, slower, and sicker. We've accepted heart disease, diabetes, obesity, dementia, and chronic pain as a normal part of growing old. But what if that's not entirely true? What if some people have figured out a better way to age? That's the question that started one of the most fascinating investigations into human health and longevity, and it led to the discovery of what became known as the blue zones. The story begins with a simple observation. Around the world, some populations seem to live much longer than average. Not just a few lucky individuals, entire communities. Researchers noticed unusual concentrations of people living into their 90s and hundreds. At first, many assumed it was genetics. That seems logical. If people in a certain area live longer, maybe they simply inherited better genes. But the more scientists looked, the more complicated the story became. Genes matter, of course they do, but genetics only explain a relatively small portion of how long most people live. In fact, many researchers estimate that lifestyle and environment have a much bigger influence than genetics alone. That realization changed everything. Because if longevity is mostly genetic, there's not much we can do about it. But if longevity is largely shaped by daily habits, then suddenly the game changes. Now there are lessons anyone can learn. This is where Dan Buettner enters the picture. Buettner wasn't a doctor. He wasn't a nutrition guru. He wasn't trying to sell miracle supplements. He was an explorer, researcher, and storyteller with a simple mission. He wanted to find out why some people live exceptionally long lives. Working with researchers, demographers, and health experts, he partnered with National Geographic to search for places where people consistently reached extreme old age. The team traveled across the globe. They interviewed centenarians. They examined birth records. They studied lifestyles. They observed daily routines. They looked for patterns. And eventually, they identified several regions that stood out from the rest of the world. These regions became known as blue zones. What's fascinating is that these places are incredibly different from one another. Different languages, different cultures, different religions, different climates, different foods. Yet despite all those differences, they shared surprising similarities. And those similarities might hold the secret to living longer and healthier lives. Before we dive into those communities, we need to clear up an important misunderstanding. Most people think longevity means simply staying alive longer, but there's a huge difference between lifespan and health span. Lifespan is how many years you live. Health span is how many of those years you remain healthy. Think about it. Almost everyone wants a long life, but very few people want 20 extra years of illness, pain, and dependence. Nobody dreams of spending the last decades of their life constantly visiting doctors, taking dozens of medications, and struggling with basic daily activities. What people really want is a long health span. They want energy, mobility, mental sharpness, independence, purpose. The remarkable thing about many Blue Zone residents is that they don't just live longer, they stay healthier for longer. Many of the diseases that are common in modern societies appear much later in life, or at much lower rates altogether. That's a huge distinction, because modern medicine has become incredibly good at keeping people alive, but keeping people healthy is a different challenge. Look around the developed world today. We have advanced hospitals, sophisticated surgeries, powerful medications, health apps, fitness trackers, DNA testing, artificial intelligence. And yet, rates of obesity, diabetes, anxiety, depression, and chronic disease continue to rise. Many people are living longer than previous generations, but they aren't necessarily living better. That's the paradox of modern life. We've become experts at treating disease, but not always at preventing it. The people living in blue zones seem to approach health from the opposite direction. They're not constantly trying to fix health problems. They're living in ways that make many health problems less likely to appear in the first place. And here's what makes the story even more interesting. Most of these people aren't health fanatics. They don't spend hours reading nutrition labels. They don't obsess over calorie counts. They don't chase every new wellness trend on social media. They don't buy expensive supplements every month. In fact, some of their habits would probably surprise modern health influencers. The secret isn't found in a miracle food. It's not hidden inside a special vitamin. It's not locked away in some expensive biohacking program. Instead, it seems to come from something much simpler. Their everyday lives are designed differently. Without realizing it, many Blue Zone residents spend decades building lifestyles that naturally support health. The key word here is naturally. They don't rely on willpower every day. They don't wake up each morning fighting against their environment. Their communities, routines, relationships, and surroundings all work together to encourage healthier behaviors. That's a powerful idea, because most people think health is about discipline. They believe success comes from constantly forcing themselves to make better choices. But what if the environment around you matters even more than motivation? What if your neighborhood, your friends, your daily routine, and your culture influence your health more than any fitness challenge ever could? That's one of the biggest lessons hidden inside the Blue Zones. Health isn't just an individual project. It's often a community project. The people around you matter. The places you live matter. The habits you repeat every day matter. And the good news is that many of these lessons can be applied anywhere. You don't have to move to a remote island. You don't have to become a monk. You don't have to completely change your life overnight. What matters is understanding what these long-lived communities are doing differently. Because when researchers looked closely at the world's healthiest and longest-living populations, they discovered something surprising. Despite living thousands of miles apart, they were following many of the same principles. The details looked different. The underlying patterns were remarkably similar. And those patterns may offer one of the clearest roadmaps we've ever found for living not just longer, but better. The journey starts with 5 extraordinary places scattered across the globe, places where growing old doesn't look the way most of us expect. And once you see how these communities live, you may never think about health, aging, or longevity the same way again. If someone told you there was a place where people regularly lived past 100, you'd probably assume they had access to the world's best hospitals, maybe some cutting-edge medical technology, maybe billionaire-level healthcare, maybe a secret anti-aging treatment nobody else knows about. But the reality is much less glamorous. In fact, it's almost boring. The people living the longest lives on Earth aren't hiding some magical secret. Most of them live surprisingly ordinary lives. They eat simple food, they stay active, they spend time with family, they know their neighbors, and somehow these simple habits seem to add up to extraordinary results. When Dan Buettner and his research team searched the globe for communities with exceptional longevity, they identified 5 places that stood out from the rest. 5 regions where people consistently lived longer, stayed healthier, and reached old age with remarkable vitality. These places became known as the Blue Zones. Let's visit each one, because every blue zone tells a slightly different story about what it means to live a long life. Okinawa, Japan, where women live longer than anyone else. The first stop is the Japanese island of Okinawa. For years, Okinawa was famous for having some of the longest living women on the planet. Many reached their 90s and 100s while remaining active and independent. At first glance, Okinawa doesn't seem extraordinary. It's a beautiful island with a warm climate and a relaxed pace of life. But when researchers started paying attention, they noticed something unusual. Older Okinawans weren't sitting around waiting to grow old. They had things to do, places to go, people to see. Many maintained strong social circles called moai. A moai is essentially a lifelong support group. Friends meet regularly. They help one another. They share problems. They celebrate successes. They create a safety net that lasts for decades. Think about how different that is from modern life. Many people today have hundreds of social media contacts, but very few close relationships. Loneliness has become one of the biggest health problems in the modern world. The Okinawans seem to have solved that problem long ago. They also follow a practice called hara hachibu. The phrase roughly means eating until you're 80% full, not stuffed, not uncomfortable, just satisfied. It's a simple habit, but over a lifetime, it may make a huge difference. Sardinia, Italy, the land of the long-lived men. Next, we travel to the mountains of Sardinia. This region surprised researchers for a specific reason. While women generally outlive men almost everywhere in the world, Sardinia has an unusually high number of men reaching extreme old age. Why? One possible answer is movement, not exercise, movement. There's a difference. Many Sardinian men spent much of their lives as shepherds. Their daily routines involved walking up and down steep hills for hours, not because they were trying to hit 10,000 steps, not because a smartwatch told them to, because that was simply how life worked. They moved naturally every day. Another interesting factor is family. Older adults in Sardinia are deeply respected. They're not pushed aside. They're not treated like burdens. They're seen as valuable members of the family and community. Imagine the psychological impact of that. Instead of feeling forgotten, older people remain connected and purposeful. That sense of belonging appears again and again in blue zones. Nicoya, Costa Rica, the power of purpose. Ask many people in Nicoya why they get out of bed each morning, and they'll have an answer. Researchers notice that many residents possess a strong sense of purpose. The locals call it plan de vida. In simple terms, it means having a reason to live, a reason to contribute, a reason to keep going. That might sound abstract, but studies consistently show that people with a strong sense of purpose often live longer and experience better health outcomes. Purpose creates direction. Direction creates motivation. Motivation encourages healthy behavior. It's a chain reaction. The Nicoyans also tend to maintain close family ties. Several generations often stay connected. Grandparents remain involved in daily family life. Older adults continue contributing rather than withdrawing from society. And once again, we see a recurring theme. These people aren't retiring from life, they're staying engaged with it. Ikaria, Greece, the island where time slows down. Then there's Ikaria, a small Greek island in the Aegean Sea. Ikaria has become famous for something remarkable. Residents experience unusually low rates of dementia and chronic disease. Researchers have spent years trying to understand why. Part of the answer may be stress, or rather the lack of it. Life on Ikaria moves at a different pace. People aren't constantly rushing. Schedules are flexible. Meals are social events. Afternoons often include rest. Neighbors regularly visit one another. Conversations last longer. People seem less obsessed with squeezing productivity out of every minute. Compare that to modern urban life. Emails, notifications, deadlines, traffic, constant pressure. Many people spend years living in a state of low-level stress without even realizing it. The Ikarians offer a different model, one where slowing down isn't viewed as laziness, it's simply part of life, and over decades that slower pace may have profound effects on health. Loma Linda, California, America's longevity surprise. The final blue zone might be the most surprising because it's located in the United States, specifically the community of Loma Linda. This is important because it proves that longevity isn't limited to remote islands or isolated mountain villages. The people of Loma Linda live in the same country as fast food, busy highways, and modern consumer culture, yet they consistently outlive the average American. Many members belong to the Seventh-day Adventist community. Their lifestyle emphasizes health, moderation, faith, family, and service. Many avoid smoking. Many avoid alcohol. Many follow largely plant-based diets. They also prioritize a weekly day of rest. Think about that for a moment. One full day dedicated to slowing down, connecting with family, reflecting, stepping away from work. In today's always connected world, that's becoming increasingly rare, yet it may be one of the healthiest habits imaginable. What these places have in common. At first glance, these 5 blue zones seem completely different. Japan, Italy, Costa Rica, Greece, California. Different languages, different foods, different traditions, different histories. Yet when researchers compared them, certain patterns kept showing up. People moved naturally throughout the day. They had strong social connections. They maintained close family relationships. They experienced lower levels of chronic stress. They had a sense of purpose. They belonged to communities, and they rarely centered their lives around convenience. That's an important point. Modern society often optimizes for convenience. We drive instead of walking. We text instead of visiting. We order food instead of cooking. We stream entertainment instead of gathering with friends. Convenience saves time, but it may also remove many of the healthy behaviors that once happened naturally. The blue zones remind us that longevity isn't usually built through dramatic interventions. It's built through small actions repeated over decades. No miracle pills, no secret formulas, no anti-aging hacks. Just daily habits quietly working in the background year after year. And perhaps the biggest surprise of all is that food, the thing most people obsess over, is only one piece of the puzzle. Because the world's longest-lived people aren't just eating differently, they're living differently. And when researchers looked closer at what was actually on their plates, they discovered another fascinating pattern. The foods that help people live the longest are probably much simpler than most of us think.
If you walk through social media today, you'd think healthy eating requires a PhD in nutrition. One expert tells you to cut carbs, another tells you to cut fat, someone else says you need to fast for 16 hours, then another person claims you should only eat during a 4-hour window. One week, eggs are good, the next week they're bad. Coffee saves your life, then coffee is ruining your health. It's enough to make anyone confused. And that's exactly why the blue zones are so interesting. Because when researchers looked at the diets of some of the longest living people on Earth, they didn't find anything complicated. No superfoods flown in from exotic countries, no expensive supplements, no celebrity meal plans, no miracle diets. In fact, if you looked at what many of these people eat every day, you might think their meals were too simple. But simplicity, it turns out, may be one of the biggest secrets. One of the first things researchers noticed was that people in blue zones eat mostly plants, not because they're trying to follow a trend, not because they're posting pictures of their meals online. It's simply how their cultures developed over generations. Across the different blue zones, roughly 90 to 95% of food comes from plant sources: vegetables, beans, whole grains, fruit, nuts, legumes, simple foods that have been around for thousands of years. This doesn't necessarily mean everyone is vegan. Some communities eat fish, some eat dairy, some eat small amounts of meat, but meat is usually a side dish, not the center of the meal. That's a major difference from modern diets. In many countries today, people build entire meals around meat: a giant steak, a double cheeseburger, a bucket of fried chicken. Vegetables often become an afterthought. In blue zones, the opposite is true. Plants are the foundation, animal products are occasional additions, and over a lifetime, that difference appears to matter. But perhaps the most important food in blue zones isn't kale, it isn't blueberries, it isn't quinoa. It's something much less exciting: beans. Yes, beans. Researchers repeatedly found that beans are one of the most common foods shared across blue zone communities. Black beans, lentils, chickpeas, soybeans, white beans, fava beans. Different cultures eat different varieties, but the pattern is remarkably consistent. If there were a hall of fame for longevity foods, beans would probably be the first inductee. Why? Because they're nutritional powerhouses. They're packed with fiber. They're rich in plant protein. They help stabilize blood sugar. They keep people feeling full longer. They're inexpensive, and unlike many trendy health foods, they've stood the test of time. The world's longest-lived populations weren't eating beans because a health influencer told them to. They were eating beans long before influencers existed. Another common theme is whole foods. Notice what you don't see much of in blue zones: highly processed snacks, sugary drinks, energy drinks, ultra-processed frozen meals, packaged junk food. Modern food companies spend billions of dollars engineering products that are almost impossible to stop eating: extra sugar, extra salt, extra fat, engineered flavor combinations designed to keep you coming back for more. The people living in blue zones grew up in environments where most food looked like food. A potato looked like a potato, beans looked like beans, vegetables came from gardens, meals were cooked at home. That's not a coincidence. Many researchers believe one of the biggest health challenges today isn't what we're eating too little of, it's what we're eating too much of. Too much added sugar, too many refined carbohydrates, too many ultra-processed products, too many calories packed into foods that provide very little nutrition. Blue zone diets naturally avoid much of that, not because residents are counting calories, because their food environment is fundamentally different. Let's talk about Okinawa for a moment. Traditionally, Okinawans consumed large amounts of vegetables, sweet potatoes, tofu, and legumes. Sweet potatoes were once a staple food there. Not protein bars, not meal replacement shakes. Sweet potatoes, simple, affordable, nutrient-dense. For decades, they formed the backbone of daily nutrition. Meanwhile, in the Mediterranean regions like Sardinia and Ikaria, meals often revolved around vegetables, beans, olive oil, whole grains, and modest portions of animal products. Again, nothing fancy, just traditional food prepared in traditional ways. What's striking is how little these communities obsess about food. Modern culture often treats eating like a complicated science experiment. People track macros, count calories, measure every gram, analyze every ingredient. There's nothing wrong with understanding nutrition, but many Blue Zone residents achieve extraordinary health without turning every meal into a math problem. Instead, they follow habits that naturally guide them toward healthier eating. One of the most famous examples comes from Okinawa, a phrase called hara hachi bu. It means eating until you're about 80% full. Think about how different that is from the typical modern eating experience. Many people stop eating when they're completely stuffed. Some don't stop until the food is gone. Others eat while distracted by television, phones, or computers and barely notice how much they've consumed. The Okinawan approach creates a small calorie gap every day, not through suffering, not through dieting, just through moderation. And when that small difference accumulates over decades, the impact can be enormous. There's another lesson hidden in Blue Zone eating habits. Meals are often social. Families eat together, friends gather together, people slow down, they talk, they laugh, they enjoy the experience. Food isn't merely fuel, it's part of community, part of culture, part of connection. Compare that to the modern habit of eating lunch at a desk while answering emails, or grabbing fast food in a car, or scrolling social media during dinner. The food itself matters, but the environment surrounding food matters too. The world's longest-lived people seem to understand that instinctively. Now here's where things get interesting. Many people hear about Blue Zone diets and immediately focus on individual foods. What berry should I eat? What supplement should I buy? Which ingredient is the secret? But that's probably the wrong question, because there is no magic ingredient. The power comes from the overall pattern. A mostly plant-based diet, lots of beans, whole foods, moderate portions, limited processed food, shared meals, consistent habits. None of these choices are particularly dramatic on their own, but together, year after year, they create a powerful effect. That's one of the biggest lessons from the Blue Zones. Health isn't usually the result of a single amazing decision. It's the result of thousands of ordinary decisions repeated consistently. And perhaps the most surprising thing about the world's longest-lived people is that they don't spend much time trying to exercise either. In fact, many of them never step foot inside a gym, yet they remain stronger and more active than people decades younger. How is that possible? The answer has less to do with workouts and more to do with the way they move through life every single day.
If you asked most people how to stay healthy, one of the first answers would probably be exercise. Go to the gym, lift weights, run on a treadmill, take a fitness class, train harder, burn more calories. Modern fitness culture has convinced us that exercise is something we schedule, something we squeeze into our day between work, errands, and family obligations. For many people, staying healthy means sitting for 10 hours and then trying to fix the damage with a 1-hour workout. And to be fair, exercise is important. The scientific evidence is overwhelming. Regular physical activity improves cardiovascular health, strengthens muscles, supports mental health, and reduces the risk of many chronic diseases. But when researchers studied the people in Blue Zones, they discovered something unexpected. Most of them weren't exercising in the way we think about exercise today. They weren't running marathons, they weren't doing CrossFit, they weren't tracking their heart rate zones. Many had never entered a gym in their lives. Yet somehow they remained active, mobile, and physically capable well into their 90s and beyond. How? The answer lies in a simple idea. They don't exercise, they move. And there's a difference.
Modern exercise is often an event. Movement is a lifestyle. Think about a typical day in the modern world. You wake up, sit during breakfast, sit in a car, sit at work, sit during lunch, sit during meetings, sit during the commute home, sit during dinner, then sit on the couch until bedtime. Even people who exercise regularly can spend most of their waking hours sitting. Researchers sometimes call this the active couch potato problem. You may exercise for an hour, but if you're inactive for the other 15 hours you're awake, your body still spends most of the day doing very little. Blue zone residents live differently. Their environments naturally encourage movement throughout the day. Let's go back to Sardinia. Many of the long-lived shepherds there spent decades walking through mountainous terrain, not occasionally, every day, rain or shine, year after year. They climbed hills, navigated uneven ground, walked long distances. Their bodies weren't getting one concentrated workout, they were getting constant low-level activity spread across the day. That pattern appears again and again in blue zones. People walk to visit friends, they walk to local shops, they work in gardens, they prepare food by hand, they clean, they repair things. They spend less time sitting and more time moving. Nothing extreme, nothing heroic, just consistent movement woven into daily life. And consistency often beats intensity. One reason modern exercise feels difficult is that it requires motivation. After a long day at work, motivation can disappear quickly. Most people know they should exercise. The challenge is actually doing it. Blue zone residents often avoid this problem entirely because movement isn't optional. It's built into their routines. They don't need discipline to go for a walk. The walk is already part of life. This is one of the most powerful lessons from the blue zones. The healthiest habits are often the ones that happen automatically. If a healthy behavior depends entirely on willpower, it's harder to sustain. If it's built into your environment, it becomes effortless. Think about gardening. Many blue zone residents maintain gardens well into old age. At first glance, gardening doesn't seem like exercise, but look closer. You're squatting, standing, bending, lifting, digging, carrying, stretching. You're engaging muscles throughout the body. And unlike a gym session, gardening often feels purposeful. You're not just moving for the sake of movement. You're producing something: food, flowers, a beautiful space. Purpose and movement combine into a single activity. That's a powerful combination. Researchers have also noticed that many blue zone residents maintain strength naturally because they continue using their bodies throughout life. In modern societies, technology often removes physical effort. Escalators replace stairs, cars replace walking, remote controls eliminate the need to get up, food delivery eliminates trips to the store. Convenience saves time, but it can also remove opportunities for movement. Blue zone environments tend to do the opposite. Movement remains a natural part of daily living. What's interesting is that these people rarely think of themselves as exercising. Ask a 95-year-old gardener if they're following a fitness program, and they'll probably laugh. They're just living. That's exactly the point. Health-supporting behaviors have become normal, not special, not something reserved for fitness enthusiasts, just part of everyday life. Another benefit of natural movement is sustainability. Many people start aggressive fitness programs with great enthusiasm. They exercise 6 days a week. They push themselves hard. They stay motivated for a month, maybe 2. Then life gets busy, the routine collapses, they quit. Blue zone residents follow a different model. Their activity levels may not look impressive on a single day, but they repeat them for decades. And decades matter. A moderate activity performed every day for 40 years will often outperform an intense program followed for 6 months. Longevity is usually built through consistency, not bursts of perfection. This idea becomes even more important as people age. Many older adults stop moving because they believe aging automatically means slowing down. But Blue Zone residents often demonstrate the opposite. They remain active because they continue moving. The movement helps preserve strength, balance, flexibility, and independence. Those abilities then make further movement possible. It's a positive cycle. Movement supports health, health supports movement. The cycle continues. Of course, nobody is suggesting that gyms are bad. Strength training, cardio exercise, and organized fitness programs can be incredibly beneficial. The lesson isn't that exercise doesn't matter. The lesson is that movement matters even more. What you do during the other 23 hours of the day may be just as important as your workout. A person who walks regularly, takes the stairs, gardens, stands more often, and stays physically engaged throughout the day may gain enormous health benefits even without a formal exercise program. The Blue Zones remind us that the human body was designed to move frequently, not continuously sit and occasionally exercise. Move frequently, move naturally, move throughout life. And while movement plays a huge role in longevity, it still doesn't explain everything, because many people exercise regularly and eat reasonably well, yet still struggle with poor health, unhappiness, or chronic stress. The people living the longest lives have another advantage, something modern society often overlooks. They belong to strong communities. They have close relationships. They know why they get up in the morning. And those invisible factors may be every bit as important as diet and movement when it comes to living a long and meaningful life.
Most people think longevity is mainly about food and exercise. Eat better, move more, lose weight, repeat. Those things matter a lot. But after years of studying Blue Zones, researchers discovered something surprising. The longest living people on Earth aren't just healthier because of what they eat or how much they move. They're healthier because of who they spend their lives with, and because they have a reason to wake up in the morning. That might sound simple, maybe even obvious, but in modern society, these are two things that many people are losing. We're more connected digitally than ever before, yet loneliness is rising. We have more entertainment than any generation in history, yet many people struggle with meaning and purpose. We have thousands of online followers, yet very few people we could call at 2 a.m. during a crisis. The people living in Blue Zones offer a very different picture. And that difference may be one of the biggest reasons they live so long. The power of having a reason to wake up. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and having absolutely nothing to do. No goals, no responsibilities, no one depending on you, no reason to contribute. At first, that might sound relaxing. For a few days, maybe even a few weeks. But over time, something changes. Humans need purpose. We need to feel useful. We need to feel that our existence matters. Researchers found this pattern repeatedly across Blue Zones. In Okinawa, people often talk about ikigai. There isn't a perfect English translation, but it's often described as a reason for being, the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, the thing that gives your life meaning. In Nicoya, Costa Rica, there's a similar concept called Plan de Vida, a life plan, a reason to keep moving forward. Notice something important here. Purpose doesn't have to be grand. You don't need to start a billion-dollar company. You don't need to become famous. You don't need to change the world. For many Blue Zone residents, purpose is surprisingly ordinary. Taking care of grandchildren, helping neighbors, maintaining a garden, supporting family members, teaching younger generations, being part of the community. Simple responsibilities become powerful sources of meaning, and meaning changes behavior. People with a strong sense of purpose often take better care of themselves. They stay active longer, they maintain social connections, they keep learning, they remain engaged with life. When you have a reason to live, you tend to make choices that support living. Why retirement isn't always the dream we imagine. Modern culture often treats retirement as the finish line. Work hard, save money, retire, then spend the rest of your life relaxing. But Blue Zones reveal something interesting. Many long-lived people never truly retire. That doesn't mean they keep working stressful jobs forever. It means they continue contributing. They remain involved. They stay connected. A 95-year-old gardener still tends plants. A grandmother still helps raise grandchildren. A former craftsman still teaches younger people. A community elder still offers advice. Their roles may change, but they don't disappear. In many modern societies, older adults are often pushed to the sidelines. People stop asking for their input. Their experience becomes undervalued. Their social circles shrink. Isolation grows. Blue Zones show a different model, one where aging doesn't automatically become irrelevant, and that difference can have a profound effect on both physical and mental health. Your friends may be affecting your health more than you think. Here's a question. How many of your daily habits are truly your own? Most people assume their decisions are independent, but humans are incredibly influenced by the people around them. Researchers have found that behaviors often spread through social networks. Smoking, drinking, eating habits, exercise habits, even happiness. If your closest friends regularly exercise, you're more likely to exercise. If they constantly eat unhealthy food, you're more likely to do the same. If they're optimistic, that mindset can influence you. If they're negative all the time, that influence spreads too. The Blue Zones provide a perfect example of this principle. Healthy behaviors aren't isolated, they're shared. Communities create expectations. When everyone around you walks regularly, walking becomes normal. When families eat vegetables every day, vegetables become normal. When social gatherings revolve around connection instead of excess, that becomes normal too. The environment quietly shapes behavior. This is one reason Blue Zone residents don't rely on extraordinary willpower. Their communities help reinforce healthy choices. The people around them pull them in the right direction. Family comes first. One pattern appears in every Blue Zone. Family matters. A lot. Older adults remain closely connected to younger generations. Children grow up around grandparents. Grandparents remain active in family life. Family gatherings are common. Support systems stay strong. This creates benefits in both directions. Older adults receive emotional support. Younger generations receive guidance and wisdom. Everyone gains a sense of belonging. Compare that to the growing problem of social isolation in many parts of the world. Millions of people live alone. Many rarely interact with neighbors. Some go days without meaningful conversation. Technology has made communication easier, but it hasn't necessarily made connection stronger. Blue Zone communities remind us that human beings evolved in groups. We're not designed to thrive in isolation. We need relationships. We need belonging. We need people who know us beyond our job titles and social media profiles. Loneliness can be as dangerous as physical illness. This may be one of the most important lessons from the Blue Zones. Loneliness isn't just an emotional issue, it's a health issue. When people become socially isolated, stress often increases, depression becomes more likely, physical health can suffer, healthy habits become harder to maintain. The opposite is true too. Strong relationships provide protection. Friends encourage healthy behavior. Families offer support during difficult times. Communities create stability. Connection acts like a buffer against life's inevitable challenges. Blue Zone residents don't seem to view relationships as optional extras. They're central to life itself. Meals are shared, celebrations are shared, challenges are shared. Life is shared, and that sharing appears to contribute to both happiness and longevity. The longevity formula isn't what most people expect. At this point, a pattern should be becoming clear. The world's longest-lived people aren't chasing health, they're building lives that naturally create it. They move because movement is part of daily life. They eat well because healthy food is part of their culture. They stay connected because relationships are woven into their communities. They remain active because they have a reason to stay active. Everything works together. Purpose, family, friendship, community, meaning. These factors don't show up on nutrition labels. You can't buy them in supplement bottles. You can't order them online. Yet they may be some of the most powerful health tools available. And when researchers combined all the lessons from every Blue Zone, they discovered 9 recurring principles, 9 patterns that appeared again and again among the world's healthiest and longest-living populations. Those 9 principles became known as the Power 9, and together they form one of the simplest and most practical roadmaps for living a longer, healthier, and more fulfilling life. After years of traveling, interviewing centenarians, studying communities, and comparing lifestyles across the Blue Zones, Dan Buettner and his team noticed something remarkable. The people living the longest lives didn't all eat the same foods. They didn't follow the same religion. They didn't live in the same climate. They didn't share the same culture. But they did share certain patterns. Again and again, the same habits appeared. Not extreme habits, not complicated habits. Simple practices repeated over decades. These became known as the Power 9, 9 common characteristics found among many of the world's longest-living populations. What's fascinating is that none of them require expensive equipment, advanced technology, or extraordinary talent. Almost anyone can begin applying them. Let's go through them one by one. Number 1. Move naturally. The first lesson is perhaps the most important. The longest-lived people don't spend their lives sitting still. They move constantly, not necessarily through formal exercise, through daily living. They walk, garden, climb stairs, do household tasks, visit neighbors, stay physically engaged. Modern life often removes movement from our routines. The Blue Zones remind us to put it back. You don't need to become an athlete. You simply need to stop treating movement as something that happens during a workout. Movement should be part of everyday life. Number 2, know your purpose. The people in Blue Zones tend to know why they wake up each morning. In Okinawa, it's called Ikigai. In Nicoya, it's called Plan de Vida. Different names, same idea. A reason to keep going.
Purpose gives structure to life. It creates motivation, it encourages engagement, and perhaps most importantly, it provides something to look forward to. Many people focus on adding years to life. Purpose helps add life to those years. Number 3, downshift. Stress is unavoidable. Everyone experiences it. The difference is how people manage it. Blue zone communities have rituals that help reduce stress. Some pray, some nap, some spend time with family, some gather with friends, some simply slow down. Modern culture often celebrates being busy, constantly busy, but the human body isn't designed to remain in a permanent state of stress. The blue zones teach us that recovery isn't laziness, it's maintenance. Just like a car can't run forever without servicing, neither can a human being. Number 4, follow the 80% rule. One of the most famous blue zone habits comes from Okinawa. Hara, hachi, bu. Eat until you're about 80% full. Not stuffed, not uncomfortable, just satisfied. This sounds almost too simple, yet over decades, this small habit can significantly reduce excess calorie consumption. Most weight gain doesn't happen overnight. It happens through tiny surpluses repeated thousands of times. The 80% rule works in the opposite direction. Tiny reductions repeated consistently. Simple, sustainable, effective. Number 5, plant slant. Across all blue zones, plants dominate the menu. Vegetables, beans, whole grains, fruits, nuts, legumes. This doesn't necessarily mean becoming vegetarian, it means shifting the balance. Plants become the foundation, animal products become supporting players. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is creating a diet that resembles what long-lived populations have eaten for generations. And that diet is overwhelmingly plant-centered. Number 6, drink in moderation and socially. One of the most misunderstood blue zone observations involves alcohol. Certain blue zone populations enjoy moderate amounts of wine, but there's an important detail many people miss. They're usually drinking with friends, with family, with meals, as part of social connection, not alone, not excessively, not as an escape from life. The lesson isn't start drinking. The lesson is that social rituals often contribute to well-being. Connection matters, community matters, shared experiences matter. Number 8, belong. Nearly every blue zone community includes a strong sense of belonging. People are part of something larger than themselves, a faith community, a cultural tradition, a neighborhood network, a social group. Humans have always been tribal creatures. We want connection, we want identity, we want community. When people feel they belong, life tends to become more stable and meaningful. That stability may contribute to both mental and physical health. Number 9, choose the right tribe. Perhaps the most powerful lesson of all is this: the people around you matter a lot. Your habits are contagious, so are the habits of your friends. If the people around you encourage healthy behavior, that influence spreads. If they encourage unhealthy behavior, that spreads too. Blue zone residents often belong to social circles where healthy choices are normal. Nobody is trying to be healthy. That's just how life works. The environment supports the behavior, and behavior becomes effortless. The real secret behind the blue zones. After learning all 9 principles, some people feel disappointed. They expect a secret, a breakthrough, a hidden formula. Instead, they get advice that sounds almost ordinary. Walk more, eat mostly plants, spend time with family, manage stress, have a purpose, build strong friendships, move naturally, belong to a community. At first glance, that doesn't seem revolutionary, but that's exactly the point. The people in the blue zones aren't living longer because they discovered some secret nobody else knows. They're living longer because they consistently do the things that humans may have been designed to do all along. Modern society often encourages the opposite: more sitting, more isolation, more stress, more processed food, more rushing, more distraction. The blue zones offer a reminder. Health isn't usually created by dramatic changes. It's built through ordinary choices repeated every day. A healthy meal, a walk with a friend, time with family, a sense of purpose, a good night's sleep, a little less stress. One day, those choices don't seem significant. One year, the difference may be small. But over 40, 50, or 60 years, they can completely change the trajectory of a life. And perhaps that's the most hopeful lesson in the entire book. You don't need perfect genetics. You don't need unlimited money. You don't need access to the world's best anti-aging technology. Many of the factors that support a long, healthy life are already available. They're found in your habits, your relationships, your environment, your daily choices. The people of the blue zones show us that longevity isn't something you chase, it's something you build, one ordinary day at a time.